Week 15 is in the books. Potentially the first round of your Dynasty playoffs is in the books, or nearly in the books, considering that we have a couple games tonight. But I do want to dive into those Dynasty waiver wires to see if there are actually any players that could be available for you guys, either to help you win a Dynasty championship or potentially to help gain some value and be able to flip them later on down the road, potentially even next season. So let's get right into the video. As I say every week, I pull real data from real Dynasty leagues, run through safe leagues on myfantasyleague.com. So any rostership data or rostership percentages that I reference in this video are from that data set of over 600 Dynasty leagues. And before we dive into any individual players, I just want to give you guys a quick list of players that are probably already rostered in your Dynasty leagues, but just double check these guys because they're not at 100% in the data set that I am pulling from. And if they are available, you guys need to go out and add these guys immediately. And that's Tyler Huntley, quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, Samaje Perine, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals, Justin Jackson, running back for the LA Chargers, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, and Josh Reynolds, wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. So the first player that I want to highlight that is still available on a lot of waiver wires out there, actually available in still almost 40% of Dynasty leagues, is Craig Reynolds, running back for the Detroit Lions, who put up a 100-yard game this past week, surprising everybody against the Arizona Cardinals in this Detroit Lions win. And it was overall just another showcase and more proof that Craig Reynolds is the guy for the Detroit Lions when both DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams are both inactive. And honestly, I think it's going to be possible that Craig Reynolds could be the guy for the Detroit Lions moving forward for the rest of the year. I think it's entirely possible that the Lions just completely shut down Swift like they kind of did Hawkinson because of his surgery. So just shut down DeAndre Swift. You have nothing to play for. Don't risk further injury or something that could actually be worse for Swift long term, as he is your guy. So don't injure him and don't risk it with DeAndre Swift. Just shut him down. Jamal Williams has been on the COVID list for over a week now, and we've had basically like no updates on how that is going and how he's progressing. But it is possible then that maybe just Craig Reynolds is just the guy. They kind of shut down Jamal Williams as well, and they see how good Craig Reynolds has been over the past 2 weeks now, and he is going to be the guy moving forward. And if that is the case, I think there's an above 0% chance that that is the case. Craig Reynolds is actually really interesting over the next couple of weeks. I mean, he plays the Atlanta Falcons next week and then plays the Seattle Seahawks in the following week, who has been one of the worst defenses against the run. So it's very possible that Detroit can come out here and potentially win one or both of their next two games after their win against the Arizona Cardinals over the next 2 weeks. And that could be really due in large part to Craig Reynolds' huge opportunity on the Detroit Lions. So I would definitely go out and see if you can pick up Craig Reynolds, because if so, you have a guy who could potentially see 18 or more touches and carries in a single game, who's done really, really well over the past 2 weeks and still has yet to find the end zone. So if he does combine what he's already been doing with finding the end zone, you're looking at a really good RB2 top 15 kind of running back week as a spot starter that you picked up off the waiver wire in your Dynasty championship or your Dynasty playoffs. So I really like going out and seeing if you can grab Craig Reynolds just on that basis alone, and on the hope that the Lions do the smart thing, shut down DeAndre Swift, and maybe Jamal Williams just continues to be out either on COVID or he himself gets shut down for the rest of the year. The next guy I want to talk about is Duke Johnson, and I have super mixed feelings about this one because for basically his entire career, I've been a major Duke Johnson fan. I've always been the guy sitting there saying that he was a workhorse in college, that he needs to get workhorse type of reps and volume in the NFL. He never got that with Cleveland. I wanted him to get that in Houston. He never got it either. And it was just super frustrating as a Duke Johnson truther that he never got that opportunity in the NFL. But finally, we see it now here. It's just, unfortunately, it came at the expense of my Myles Gaskin as well. Like, I was really counting on Myles Gaskin this week, and the matchup was there. I mean, it was the New York Jets. They're the worst team against the run this whole entire year. Myles Gaskin did well against the Jets earlier in the year when they played them, so I was all ready for some Myles Gaskin this week after being activated from the COVID list. And everything that I saw for Myles Gaskin and the process was all there. It just went to Duke Johnson. So I had mixed feelings on this game, because I was so happy to see Duke Johnson in a workhorse type role. I mean, this was the first game in his career where he saw over 20 carries. He had over 100 yards, which is the first time he's done that in his career. And it was his first multi-touchdown game in his career as well. It's just a complete career game for Duke Johnson. I was so happy for him. It just came at the expense of my Myles Gaskin process. So that was all that. The big problem that I have with Duke Johnson is I don't know if this is legit, if this is going to stick or not. I don't think he's the future, so I don't want to pick up Duke Johnson on the probability that he is their starting running back next year. I don't even think Myles Gaskin's their starting running back next year. So I don't want to pick up Duke Johnson because of that. I also don't trust Flores now because Duke Johnson was activated and signed to the 53-man roster today on Monday when I'm recording this because of his performance on Sunday. So now we're looking at Duke Johnson, Myles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed is still there, and Malcolm Brown returned from the injured reserve as well. So we have a true 4 running backs who have all seen some sort of significant work this whole entire year. And Brian Flores just does not seem like he wants to choose any one of these guys. So my biggest fear is that all of them are going to get some sort of work and you're never going to really be able to trust any of them for fantasy, especially in the fantasy football playoffs. Not to mention the fact that they play the New Orleans Saints next week, who just basically shut down Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a whole last night. So I don't really trust that the Miami Dolphins or any of their running backs are going to do well against the New Orleans Saints already in an offense that I'm worried about them being in some sort of a committee. So I don't trust that you're playing any of these Miami Dolphins running backs next week in the fantasy playoffs in the semifinals. And so I don't know what to do. I don't want to advocate picking up Duke Johnson because I'm scared that if you do pick him up, you're not going to be able to flip him or trade him because of the potential that he's the starter next year. You're not going to start him. So what's he doing on your roster then? Why would you throw any fab at him just to be able to pick him up and not do anything with him? So that I think is really just my way of just coming full circle on don't pick up Duke Johnson. Let somebody else pick him up, spend the remaining amount of their fab to pick him up. Maybe they drop somebody who has better long-term value that they just can't wait on anymore. So then that actually works out for you to pick up that guy. Or maybe there's somebody else like Craig Reynolds that you can throw all of your fab on if you still have it on Craig Reynolds versus splitting it up or spending a lot more on Duke Johnson and be able to solidify the fact that you get Craig Reynolds instead. I think that's the advice that I want to go for here in this video with Duke Johnson, to actually not pick him up, let him go to somebody else and see what potentially comes back to you either through the waiver wire by some other player or via whoever they end up dropping for Duke Johnson by the other manager. The last player I want to talk about is actually really important because it could impact your matchups this week. Yes, tonight, because the Seattle Seahawks play tonight. And when I was looking at my rostership data, Freddie Swain stuck out to me because he's still available in over 70% of Dynasty leagues. And while I'm recording this on Monday, as of right now, Tyler Lockett has not been activated from the COVID list after being placed on it late last week. So it's entirely possible that the Seattle Seahawks go into this Tuesday night game against the LA Rams with DK Metcalf, Freddie Swain, and Dwayne Eskridge as their 3 wide receivers. And if that is the case, that opens up a lot of opportunity for both Freddie Swain and Dwayne Eskridge. Now, Eskridge is actually rostered in a whole lot of other Dynasty leagues out there. I believe he's 95+% rostered already. But Freddie Swain sitting down there at only 29% rostership is really interesting because he's had a couple games this year where he's caught long ball touchdowns. He's kind of played the Tyler Lockett role before. And also with the fact that they're playing the LA Rams, I expect DK Metcalf to be shadowed or covered a lot by Jalen Ramsey. And if that is the case, then he could be kind of taken out of the game, taken out of the equation completely. Whereas Russ is going to have to now rely more on Freddie Swain, Dwayne Eskridge, the running backs, the tight ends, and Gerald Everett to win this game. And we know that the Seahawks are probably going to have to throw a lot to beat the LA Rams. So I really like the opportunity of potentially being able to pick up Freddie Swain today if you have other players that haven't played yet or are free agents or any other weird rules that your league has. Like if you were banking on Terry McLaurin being out and you have a DeAndre Carter or a Cam Sims or Adam Humphries or somebody like that, and you need somewhat of a home run swing tonight for the fantasy playoffs to win your matchup, Freddie Swain is that guy, and you can drop any of those Washington or Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers that you might have just sitting on the back end of your bench and pick up Freddie Swain and just throw him into your starting lineup if you still have that roster spot. So I wanted to highlight Freddie Swain there as a guy that you could pick up to play tonight for your fantasy matchup this week. Lastly, I want to throw out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver room. Unfortunately, Chris Godwin had a sprained MCL on Sunday night, and he is expected to miss the remainder of the regular season, so he's done for fantasy purposes. Mike Evans also left the game early. Leonard Fournette left the game early. Like, this was a really tragic game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the way that they've handled injuries all year basically is they're just waiting for everybody to come back healthy. They don't want to push anybody back because they know that this team is a true Super Bowl contender. So they want these guys healthy for the playoffs. So they're not going to push back Godwin. They're not going to really push back Mike Evans either. They're not really going to push back Fournette. So if that is the case, that opens up a lot of targets and opportunity for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and really juicy matchups over the next 2 weeks with the Carolina Panthers and the New York Jets. So, I mean, somebody else outside of Rob Gronkowski has to see targets. And if that is the case, we're looking at guys like Tyler Johnson, Brashad Perriman, Jalen Darden. Like, this is the backup crew of wide receivers that we're looking at for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as well as Antonio Brown returning next week. But somebody's going to have fantasy value. I would expect that it's Tyler Johnson. And so if that is the case, go out and double check that your waiver wires does not have Tyler Johnson on it. He's already rostered in over 95% of the Dynasty leagues that I'm looking at. So it's really unlikely that he's available on your waiver wire. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver core is kind of interesting, but I'd imagine the guys that you want are already rostered in your Dynasty leagues. And if you would like a weekly breakdown on all of the games from this past week 15 from a Dynasty perspective and breakdown, you can click right up here and watch that video. And with that all being said, guys, thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch y'all later.